My name is Erica. 6 weeks ago, at my adoptive family's early Mother's Day dinner, my so-called mother, Mrs. Miller, grabbed the microphone in front of 25 relatives. With a cold and calculating look, she said, "We never wanted Erica. We adopted her for the $900 monthly state checks. She was a financial move, not a daughter. She should be on her knees thanking us for letting her live under our roof." My sister, Lily, laughed heartily and started filming it for her TikTok. My father, Mr. Miller, just stared at his plate, silent as a stone. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked steadily to the head table. I slid a thick folder across the white tablecloth and said calmly, then read the last page. Mrs. Miller opened it, and in an instant, her face turned as white as the tablecloth. She dropped the microphone, grabbed her keys, and rushed out of the restaurant, leaving behind her coat, her purse, and all her dignity. What she read was not just proof that she had stolen $200,000 from me. It was the moment when the web of lies she'd woven for so long came crashing down. If you're wondering how I uncovered this mess, what was really on that last page, and how this so-called family fell apart, stick around. Before I tell you what made her run, let me take you back to April 10, 2026. That day, I discovered that my entire life had been a cold-blooded transaction. It was a Sunday. I remember it clearly because I was grading math tests at my small kitchen table when the postman knocked. I had 25 papers to grade, a red pen in my hand, and a lukewarm cup of tea in a mug that my colleague gave me as a joke. As I was grading, I noticed that 12 kids had made the same mistake on a complex equation. I was so focused on the papers that I wasn't expecting anything, especially not a certified letter. The return address said Thompson and Partners, attorneys at law, established in 1990. I opened the letter standing in my doorway. My apartment is a tiny one-bedroom place. It costs me $900 a month in rent and is just a 12-minute walk from Maplewood Elementary, where I teach 4th grade. I've been scrimping and saving for a house down payment for 4 years, and I've managed to put away $9,500. Every single dollar was earned from grading papers late at night, tutoring on weekends, and running summer study programs. The letter began, "Dear Miss Erica Thompson, we represent the estate of Robert and Emily Thompson." My hand froze. Robert and Emily Thompson were my biological parents, names I hadn't spoken out loud in 18 years. I sat down on my front step and continued reading. According to the terms of an irrevocable trust established in May 2008, I was entitled to receive $200,000 upon my 25th birthday, which was on September 15, 2024. However, their records showed that the funds were withdrawn on September 20, 2024, under an authorization bearing my signature. They'd been trying to contact me for confirmation since February 2025. I read the letter 3 times, my mind racing. That $200,000 was supposed to be my future. On my 25th birthday, I'd spent the day alone in my apartment, eating a cheap cake from the grocery store and watching old movies on TV. There was no party, no calls from my adoptive family. Lily had posted TikTok videos from a luxury ski vacation in Aspen with her friends that week. I'd thought then, must be nice. Now, I understood how she'd paid for it. I called the number on the letterhead. It took me 4 tries before someone answered. It was a woman's voice, professional but tired. "Thompson and Partners," she said. "This is Erica Thompson," I said. My voice sounded strange, too calm. I just received a letter about a trust fund. I never signed anything. I have no idea what you're talking about. There was a long pause. Then she said, "Miss Thompson, my name is Sarah Thompson. I was your biological parents' attorney. I need you to come to my office on Tuesday. Can you do that?" "What do you mean I signed something?" "I didn't," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Tuesday, after school if you need to," she repeated. "I owe you an apology, and it has to be in person." She hung up before I could ask more questions. I sat on my front step for over an hour. The math tests were still on my kitchen table, and my tea had gone cold. I kept thinking about the line in the letter, authorization bearing your signature. I knew I'd never signed anything. On Tuesday after school, I drove downtown to Thompson and Partners. It took me 30 minutes in traffic, and my old 2010 Toyota Corolla rattled with every acceleration. The building was an old, imposing structure with marble floors in the lobby. The receptionist was a middle-aged woman with a warm smile. She looked up when I walked in and said, "You're the Thompson daughter." I nodded. "Ms. Thompson has been really worried about you, dear." "Go right in," she said. Ms. Thompson's office smelled of old books and freshly brewed coffee. There were diplomas on the wall, including one from Harvard Law School, 1992. On her desk was a photo of her with a young couple. I recognized them immediately, even though I was only 5 when they died. Robert and Emily Thompson, my real parents. Ms. Thompson stood up when I entered. She was 58, wearing a smart black suit. The first thing she said was, "Miss Thompson, I owe you a huge apology." I stayed standing. "You said I signed something," I said. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. I sat down, and she remained standing. "Your biological parents were my clients. When they died in a plane crash in May 2008, they left everything to you, their savings and life insurance proceeds. They set up an irrevocable trust of $200,000 to be released when you turned 25. I never got it, I said. I know, she said, sitting down heavily. On September 20th, 2024, your adoptive mother, Mrs. Miller, came to this office. She had paperwork, a notarized authorization form with your signature. It stated that you were too busy with work to handle the withdrawal yourself and that you'd appointed her as your representative. My throat tightened. I never signed that. I should have called you directly. That's on me, she said. But Mrs. Miller was very convincing. She said you were overwhelmed and grateful for her help. I wanted to believe her. Your parents trusted me to take care of you, and I failed. She slid a folder across the desk. This is a photocopy of the authorization. I opened it. There was my name, Erica Thompson, and a signature. But the handwriting was all wrong. The T in Thompson was too slanted, and the E in Erica was written in a way I never did. I've signed my name thousands of times as a teacher, on report cards, permission slips, and parent-teacher conference notes. I know my own handwriting. That's not my signature, I said firmly. Ms. Thompson took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Miss Thompson, if what you're saying is true, then we're not talking about a simple mistake. We're talking about fraud, forgery, and possibly criminal charges. Do you want to pursue this? I looked at the signature again. Someone had clearly practiced it, but they hadn't gotten it right. How much did she take? I asked. The full amount, $200,000, she said. And you said my parents saved that for me? They saved $100,000. The rest was life insurance proceeds. Your father was a successful software engineer, and your mother was a doctor. They were very responsible people, Erica. They wanted you to have a good future, a college education, a house of your own. They died trying to give you that. I sat there, very still. My biological parents, people I barely remembered, had been looking out for me from beyond the grave, while the people who'd raised me for 18 years had betrayed me. I need copies of everything, I said. The trust documents, the forged authorization, and the bank records showing where the money went. Can you get me that? Ms. Thompson nodded. I'll have it ready by Thursday. I stood up, shook her hand, and walked out. In the parking lot, I finally let the tears flow. Then I pulled out my phone and searched for a private investigator in the area. I found Mark Johnson's office above a sandwich shop on Elm Street. The smell of freshly baked bread followed me up the narrow stairs. His door had a sign that said Mark Johnson, Private Investigations. Inside, it looked like a typical PI's office. There were files everywhere, and the desk was covered in coffee stains. There was a photo of Mark in a police uniform from 15 years ago. "You're the teacher," he said when I walked in. He was 42, with a crew cut and intense eyes. "You sounded young on the phone." "I'm in my mid-20s, and someone stole $200,000 from me. My adoptive mother forged my signature and withdrew my inheritance," I said. Mark leaned back in his chair. "You got proof?" I slid Miss Thompson's folder across his desk. He flipped through it slowly, making notes on a yellow legal pad. When he finished, he looked up. "You understand this might tear your family apart, right? Once I start digging, there's no going back. Are you sure you want to do this?" "There's nothing to go back to," I said. "They stole from me and lied to me. I want all the evidence." "All right," he said, pulling out a contract. "My retainer is $4,000. That covers 2 weeks of investigation, bank records, financial trails, and witness interviews if needed. If it takes longer, we'll renegotiate." $4,000 was almost 3 months' rent for me, and it was a big chunk of my house down payment savings. But I wrote the check anyway because if I was right, I'd already lost $200,000. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Everything you know about Mrs. Miller, where she works, where she banks, any financial documents you can get your hands on. Also, your sister, Lily, right? Her social media accounts. If they spent your money, I'll find the receipts." I gave him everything I knew. Mrs. Miller worked at Citibank as a loan officer. Lily's TikTok account had 50,000 followers, and her posts were all about her luxurious lifestyle, expensive clothes, and fancy vacations. "One more thing," Mark said as I was about to leave. "How far back do you want me to look?" "As far as it goes," I said. He nodded slowly. "You're not going to like what I find." "I already don't like it," I said. "But I need to know." While Mark was working, I couldn't stop thinking about my childhood. I was 5 years old when Robert and Emily Thompson died. It was a tragic plane crash on their way back from a business trip. I was staying with a neighbor. I remember my mom, Emily, reading me a bedtime story the night before they left. She had this story about a little girl who found her way home after getting lost in the woods. I didn't understand it fully then, but maybe she was trying to teach me about resilience. After their death, I was in foster care for 6 months while they searched for relatives. There were none. My parents were both only children, and their parents had passed away earlier. I was all alone, except for my godparents, Mr. and Mrs. Harris. I have faint memories of them at the funeral. Mrs. Harris was crying, holding me, and saying, "We'll take care of you. We promise." But they didn't. In August 2008, the Millers adopted me instead. I never asked why. As a kid, you just accept what adults tell you. The first night in the Miller house, I remember lying in a room that smelled like air freshener. The bed was hard, and the sheets were scratchy. I could hear Lily crying in the next room, saying, "I don't want her. She's not my sister." Mrs. Miller's voice came through the wall, "Stop crying, Lily. She's here now. We have to make it work. She's family now. We're going to love her." I was 6 years old by then. Even at that age, I could tell that I wasn't wanted for who I was. I was just a means to an end. Growing up in the Miller house was like being a stranger in my own home. Lily got new clothes every season, while I wore hand-me-downs from Mrs. Miller's niece. When I asked for a new pair of shoes in 5th grade, Mrs. Miller sighed and said, "Erica, "Do you know how expensive you are?" I was 10 years old, and I didn't understand what she meant at first, but I soon learned that asking for things made me a burden. Lily went to a private school that cost $10,000 a year, while I went to public school. When I asked why, Mr. Miller said, "Lily needs the special attention. You're doing fine where you are." At 17, I got a job at the local bookstore after school, earning $8 an hour. I used the money to buy my own school supplies and clothes. Mrs. Miller said, "Good. You're learning responsibility." But what I was really learning was that I wasn't worth investing in. When I got into college, I got a partial scholarship and took out student loans for the rest. Mrs. Miller said, "Well, at least you won't cost us too much." Meanwhile, Lily's college expenses were fully paid for by the Millers. Every Mother's Day, I made handmade cards for Mrs. Miller using construction paper, markers, and glitter. She would smile thinly and put the cards on the counter, never displaying them. Lily bought expensive gifts like perfume and jewelry, and those were proudly displayed on the mantel. I didn't realize then that the words "you should be grateful" were a weapon. Every time Mrs. Miller said it, she was really saying, "You owe us." That $900 a month in state adoption assistance had been flowing into their account for 13 years. That money was supposed to be for my needs, my education, and my future. Instead, it paid for Lily's private school tuition, her dance lessons, and her pageant fees. It took 25 years and $200,000 in theft for me to realize that I was worth so much more. I was always worth it, I just hadn't found my real family yet. On April 20th, Mark called me. "I found the bank records," he said. "You're going to want to sit down for this." I was already sitting in my classroom after school, surrounded by papers. "Tell me," I said. "On September 20th, 2024, your mother withdrew $200,000 from the trust account at First National Bank at 3:15 p.m. 3 minutes later, she deposited the full amount into her personal checking account at Citibank, a joint account with your father." I closed my eyes. "Where did it go?" "Everywhere," he said. I could hear him shuffling papers. In October 2024, $50,000 was used to buy a 2024 BMW X5 for Lily. She posted a TikTok video of it 2 days later, captioning it "Living my best life." In November 2024, $30,000 was transferred to Lily's college account for her tuition. In December 2024, $25,000 was charged to a travel agency for a 3-week trip to the Maldives for the whole family. Lily's TikTok was full of photos from the trip. I felt sick to my stomach. "There's more," Mark continued. In January 2025, $35,000 was used for a down payment on a luxury apartment near Lily's college. And throughout 2025, there were numerous charges at high-end stores for Lily's designer clothes and accessories. I did the math in my head. It added up to over $140,000. "What about the rest?" I asked. "The rest went towards home improvements at the Miller house, like a new kitchen and a swimming pool. Mr. Miller also bought a new fishing boat with some of the money." I was fuming. "And the state adoption assistance?" I pulled those records, too. "The state paid your family $900 a month from August 2008 to September 2023, when you turned 21. That's a total of $162,000 over 15 years. According to your adoption file, you have a learning disability and ADHD, which qualified the Millers for the higher payment tier. But I think you know who lied about that." I laughed bitterly. "I graduated with honors. I'm a teacher. I don't have any of those conditions." "Exactly. The caseworker, Mrs. Green, had some suspicions. She wrote in her private notes that Mrs. Miller seemed overly interested in the financial benefits of the adoption. But she didn't report it because she was afraid of disrupting the placement. I need you to get me every piece of evidence, every receipt, every bank statement, and every social media post, I said. Already done. I'll have a full report ready by May 5th. What do you want to do with it? I thought about all the times Mrs. Miller had paraded me in front of relatives, talking about how they'd saved me.